For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
That's what happens. The more you think about something spiritually, you get the answers. Whether somebody comes into your office and gives them to you, or a best friend, whatever, you're going to get an answer if you keep wanting the answer.
Spirituality and the paranormal. My guest, Dr. Karen E. Herrick. She's a director for the Center of Children of Alcoholics in Red Bank, New Jersey. She had an amazing experience, a Holy Spirit encounter during holotropic breathwork training. If you've had an experience you can't explain, and it's a paranormal type of experience, you're not crazy. That's the point. She also wrote the book, You're Not Finished Yet, talks about her private practice work, and then adds a couple of chapters on spirituality and spiritual emergence experiences. The spiritual experiences that people have when they're working in recovery, how did you identify that as a challenge and a place to start working?
Well, I had a spiritual experience where I felt this breath come through my body. When at a conference, I laid down and did holotropic breath work. It's supposed to put you in an altered state, and all kinds of things could happen. You could have memories, whatever, spiritual experience. And it was the first time I was ever told, do not think, just breathe. So the music was being played to activate the chakra system, which is our invisible energy system in our body. And so I didn't think, and I felt this breath eventually come into my body and go out my mouth. And I thought, whose breath is that? And then I thought, don't think, just breathe. So we breathed together, the other breath and me. And then after a while, it became very chaotic, and the trainers came over, and one of the trainers got behind my neck, and he said, hold on to my wrist, and he said, you have to push, and you have to push, and you have to push. And I'm thinking, well, why? What am I doing? But then don't think, just do what he tells you. So I did. And then I had the thought, where's my mother? And I thought, why do I have that thought? And then just keep it going. So finally, when it was all over, I laid there on the blanket, and they said I made these little baby sounds, and my fists were closed around my face, and that I had had a rebirth, that I experienced my own birth. And I didn't tell anybody at that time that I felt this breath. And then when you get up, you go and you draw a mandala, which is a Jungian picture in a circle, and it's to really let you know what happened in your unconscious. So I drew this flower and the sun and a tree and grass, and I had no idea what that meant. And then you go to lunch. Now, I thought this whole thing had taken 20 minutes, and actually had taken about 4 hours. So I'd been in an altered state. I lost my sense of time, which is what a spiritual experience is. And I knew there was a God. Before that, I had thought there was some type of energy that had to do with nature, because nature was so beautiful. And I was raised in upstate New York, and, used to walk in the woods as a teenager. And I thought, something created all of this. I don't know what. So anyway, I knew there was a God. I knew I was connected to these 21 people that were doing this breath work that weekend. And I knew we were connected to the whole world. So it was a beautiful thing, but I was really kind of out of it, because when you go to the fourth dimension and you don't know what time is and all that, it's, you've kind of crossed into another state of consciousness. So I went to lunch, had lunch, came back. Everybody sat around and talked about their mandalas. And the professor that was there said to me, oh, well, you had a rebirth. And I said, uh-huh. And I didn't want to act stupid. I felt this breath. And so I said nothing. And I waited, and nobody else had a breath, and nobody else had a rebirth. So I was like, okay. So this is what it's like, though, coming from an alcoholic family, because it was always so confusing, and you're always trying to figure it out. So I just thought, well, I'll be okay. I'm staying here till Saturday. And then at Saturday, it was in Connecticut, and I was driving and being the lead car for like 3 cars going to Newark Airport. And so everybody went out for pizza and the movie that night. I wasn't leaving the little place where we were because I needed the safety. And then about Friday, I said, you got to get it together. Whatever it is that happened to you, just get it together now, and then you'll figure it out. So it took me like a year and a half. And Bill Wilson's story from Alcoholics Anonymous, when I read that again, really after having experienced the breath, that's what he experienced, a breath, not of air, but of wind went through him. And I thought, yeah, that's what happened to me. And then eventually I learned that it was the Holy Spirit. So I think the Holy Spirit is in charge of spiritual experiences for people, and that your soul determines what kind of a spiritual experience you're going to have. Then other people my clients started coming to me with these stories. There was one story of a gentleman who's like 29, and he lived with his alcoholic father, and he worked in a restaurant, so he'd come home like, 10, 11 o'clock at night. His father would be in the kitchen drunk, and they would fight. So he came in because he broke up in a relationship, and he was told that I helped with the relationship. So he came in, and I did my assessment the first time, and he was very frightened. So, are you frightened of your father? No. Are you frightened of your boss at work? No. I said, well, you seem, a little uptight, but it's hard to come to a therapist. So we're going to see what you're like the next time you come in. So he did. He came in the next time. He was just as uptight as the first time. And I always have had a portable computer since, I don't know, whenever they came out. So I put down my computer and everything, and I said, you're very afraid. And if we're going to talk about this relationship, we're going to have to really know and trust each other. So I don't know what happened to you, but I think something happened to you, and you're not telling me. And if that happened, if that's true, I need you to explain to me what happened to you because we're going to have a different level of trust. So he said, well, this one thing had happened, but his priest had told him never to tell anybody because they would think he was crazy. And I said, well, I'm qualified to tell you whether you're crazy or not. Number one,
I'm qualified. Yes. Perfect.
You don't look crazy right now. So he said what William James said they would always say. I don't have the words to explain this to you. And you're going to think I'm crazy when I do. And he said they had a fight, and which it was normal. However, there were some knives on the chopping block in front of his father. And his father picked up one of these knives and threw it at him. And he said, now something like a pane of glass came down in front of me, and the knife bounced off of it. Wow. So it still touches me when I hear it. And I said, okay. I said, well, that was a force field of some kind, and it was to protect you. One thing we can't count on is that that's going to happen again. So I don't want you to fight with your father. If you have to eat someplace else, and certainly don't be around him when there's knives. I said, and this happened to you? And I said, can you forget this? Like your priest said. And he said, no. I said, no, you can't. And I said, the priest has never had an experience like this, and he was just trying to protect you. Now, you didn't come here for this situation, but I can give you a list of books that you could read, and there are all kinds of different spiritual experiences that we can't explain that happen to people just like this. So there are people out there like you who have had something like this, but since you're 29, I think the relationship is the most important thing. So if you ever want to investigate that, we'll talk about it. Oh, okay. And he sat in that chair, and he was so relieved because he was going to try to fake it that he wasn't crazy somehow, through our whole therapy. And then, I don't know, I had another client come in who was a recovering guy, and he said, I think we call this a doorknob issue. As he was leaving one session, he said, I leave my body at night, and I'm really afraid I'm not going to be able to get back in my body sometime. So I said, well, how do you usually get back in? He said, well, I just think about it, and I'm back in. And that's true. That's how you do think about it. That's how you get back in. If you think, I want to be back in my physical body, and you go back in. So I said, okay, well, we'll talk about that next session. So then I had to do a lot of reading that week or 2 weeks and find out what happens when you leave your body. And I found out, that Robert Monroe did that years ago. And in the 50s, and he created this Monroe Institute where if you want to learn how to leave your body, you go there in Virginia. And by the time he came back, I knew all that. And he did go to the Farber Institute for a week. he met another lady who left her body, and they lived happily ever after. So,
out of body, gone.
So I was thinking, if I had this weird thing happen to me, and and these people are having these things, and they're not lying to me, I know that they have had them. Other people are having them. They have to be.
Yeah.
So I decided to get a doctorate. So my thesis was naming spiritual experiences, and that's where I studied about 135 people who came to workshops with me at different conferences, and I gave them a pre-test and a post-test about what did they know about spiritual experiences. And a lot of them didn't know the difference between a spiritual experience and mental illness. So that was a big thing to find out, because how are they going to diagnose a spiritual experience if they can't tell the difference? And so the biggest difference is somebody who is having a psychotic break is grandiose and usually, is talking to Muhammad or Christ or somebody, and their story never stays the same. And they can't come in and out of the story like someone who had a spiritual experience. They tell you the same story every time. And also they're humble, because that's how you feel when you felt all this awe and everything. So those are the two major differences, and it's really, clarifying when you can understand that. So that was how I got into this business. And now I help a lot of people in chronic grief who, no matter what we do, after 8 or 9 months, can't seem to get out of it. And so then I started recommending mediums, and that would they please go and see if their deceased loved one would come in, because people have a lot of guilt when somebody dies, and especially if they die quickly, and they don't have time to prepare. That started to really work. I had one gentleman who came in, and his wife died, had an instant heart attack one morning when he went down to breakfast. She was dead on the kitchen floor, and left him with 2 teenage kids to take care of, and he had no idea how to do that. I got lucky with that, because the wife that died was a twin, and her sister had come to me, for a couple of years, and she went right to a medium as soon as her sister died of a heart attack, and she knew where she was, and she felt better. And so after 9 months with this gentleman, I said, look, we have to spend more time on parenting, and right now your guilt is still so high. I would like you to go see a medium. And I mentioned it a couple of times. And then he said, no, he wasn't going to do that. And I said, well, your sister-in-law went, and how is she handling this grief? Oh, much better. I said, yeah, because she knows where your wife is, and she's not worried about her. And she doesn't feel like she caused the death somehow because she was a bad sister. So that's what I want for you. So you have to do something here, and just coming to me is not working. So he said, all right, he would go. So he went. When he came back in, he was just like that young man in the chair. His shoulders were down. He was relaxed. And I said, we can't guarantee your wife's going to come in. But you lost your parents last year, or you lost an aunt and uncle 18 months ago. Somebody up there is going to come in, because love is the connection. And they love you, and they care about you, and they can see how you're struggling. And they don't want that, because they're on the other side where everything is, love, happiness, music, flowers, all that stuff. They want you to know they're okay. Somebody's going to come in. So sure enough, they all came in.
It was a party, huh?
It was a party. And he said, and he felt so relieved. She said it was, just the problem with her heart, and it wasn't, because he had smoked enough pot and all that stuff that he was so worried about. So anyway, then we got to do some parenting, and he said, and she told me which boy we have to really be concerned about. And I said, oh, good. Okay. So tell me everything.
See, that's amazing. I mean, that's something that is just now becoming more, I guess, acceptable is a word, or at least more possible, that people are allowing that mediums and other types of support systems are there. And you don't have to consider somebody crazy because they want another type of alternative resource to help them through the grief process.
Yes, yes. And also, I know what mediums to send them to. I've been to them, or, friends of mine have been to them, or other clients, and, they're all ones that really worked well. So, we don't just go to anybody either.
That's also helpful. Lilydale is one of the medium hubs, a town where they actually have stringent requirements to become a medium if you live in that town. Other people I've talked to have actually developed their own abilities, not to work with all sorts of people, but with their own relatives, their own loved ones. They have developed the ability to hear or connect. And that's something we all have the ability to do. It's just, it isn't something we've been taught. Many of us have been taught about.
That's right.
When you were first getting into this, I thought was really interesting that you had your PhD consultant, Raymond Moody.
Oh, yes, Raymond. He's a wonderful gentleman.
Well, he was the forerunner to all of this, and researched and gave it a lot more concrete validity because of his work.
Oh, absolutely. Near-death experiences, and he said, Karen, they seem to have died, but they come back. So I called it near-death. And, and he's wonderful. And he's been in the field, 30, 40 years now. You know what Raymond taught me? One of the biggest things was the word predegression. And I read all of Raymond's books because he was my consultant, and I wanted to learn the most I could. He has a book entitled The Last Laugh. And if I could recommend any book, it would be that, because he said that's the one the publisher didn't change very much. So it's all Raymond, and he really has a wonderful sense of humor. But in there, he talks about this word predegression. And he explained it very technically, and I don't have it in front of me, but something about in mental illness, people use the information they have from their life, and it predegresses to a time when they will need that information to have a paranormal experience, something like that. So he said this was the purpose of the paranormal. So I asked him to explain it to me, and he did, but he didn't have any examples. So I'm thinking about it for maybe 6 weeks, and it was Christmas, and I was running spirituality groups at that time, which were wonderful. And people were supposed to stay for 12 weeks and then move on. These are people that some I had in therapy before, and they wanted something more than therapy. And other people just came. They were not allowed to do a therapy session in the spirituality group. We just talked about different spiritual experiences they had and the history of that. So there was this one woman who, she was raised in a family where they believed that Wednesday's child was full of woe. She was born on Wednesday, and she was very depressed. And so the group, and we had talked to her about, okay, so when you get depressed, you're going to use something spiritual to get out of it. So she had taken these meditation courses, and she took a walk. She had tea that day. Now, this was like the first week in January. And if I could ever find those notes, I bet it was on the Three Kings Day. But anyway, so she comes in, and she said after the holidays, she had this wonderful experience. And so she was so depressed. And so she finally decided to sit down and meditate. So she did. And during the meditation, the three kings appeared to her. And they had gifts for her. They gave them to her, and they bowed in front of her. And they just made her feel so special. And she just couldn't believe it. It just was wonderful. And she probably said some other things about the three kings. But anyway, that was it. That was my example of predegression. Because she was Catholic. She had been mentally ill most of her life. And she needed an image. Now, it's very Jungian, too. And, of course, Carl Jung is one of my favorite psychologists. And he believes that the symbols will come from your unconscious that are helpful. So Jung doesn't use the word predegression, but he does, always want us to look at the symbols that have come into our life. So anyway, I had an example. And so when I had to go down south, wherever Raymond was living there, then I had to give a presentation for 2 to 3 hours of what I'd learned. And I gave him this example, and he that was really good. And I said, yeah, it really was. And it came just from thinking about it. So that's what happens. The more you think about something spiritually, you get the answers. Whether somebody comes into your office and gives them to you, or a best friend, whatever, you're going to get an answer if you keep wanting the answer. So that's another, just like spiritual clue. But it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoy showing people and having them tell me their images. Sometimes I have them draw if they're depressed and, pictures of their family and when they were younger and where they sat at a dinner table and all that kind of stuff. We get all kinds of good information that way in therapy. So symbols are the key that your unconscious gives to you. And Jung, Freud believed your unconscious was just this repository for your family of origin, memory, and sexual repression. But Jung says that the unconscious has an intelligence all of its own. It's very alive, and it has more power sometimes than your consciousness. And certainly, when people have an eruption in their therapy or in their life and get rageful, angry, whatever, that is a complex that's coming up to consciousness. And so I believe the unconscious is something to really respect and to listen to, and that we're going to get symbols and ideas and thoughts and myths and different stories that somehow really connect with us,
Dr. Karen E. Herrick, website, KarenEHerrick.com.
Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Tired of wasting time and money on starvation diets that lead to more frustration and stress? If there was a weight loss solution that could actually work for you, would you try it? Then head to Golo.com.
I'm Steve. I lost 138 pounds in 9 months on Golo.
I'm Amber. I've lost 128 pounds with Golo Taking Release.
If you're ready to take back control of your life, head to Golo.com now and see how Golo can work for you. That's GOLO.com.
My sleep is way better. My inflammation has gone way down. Golo saved my life. I was way overweight. That's what sent me down the path. I wanted to make sure and live for my kid.
I have literally tried everything. I was on the verge of getting gastric bypass surgery, and I saw the Golo commercial, and it was the last thing I tried because it worked.
Join over 2 million people who have found a better way to lose weight with Golo. Your healthier and happier life begins at Golo.com. That's GOLO.com. Again, GOLO.com.
Spirituality and the paranormal. My guest, Dr. Karen E. Herrick. I want to go back that word that you used. What is predegression? How do you spell that?
Preter, and then gression, Gression. And all it means is that the unconscious has given you a symbol when you were very upset about something, very depressed about something, and you meditated and, you said, I need help, and sent you an image, and she'd probably been told that story her whole life, that the three kings came and gave gifts, and they did to her.
Yes, and that's a powerful story, and especially this time of year, we three kings of Orient, the whole... it is, It works.
And so I told her, I said, now, all of us have Christmas cards, and if we don't want to save them and we have the three kings, we're going to bring them to you, and you're going to make this collage of the three kings, and you're going to frame it, and you're going to have it with you forever, because this is a beautiful thing that happened to you. So those things have to be validated also.
Your website, KarenHerrick.com, and there are books, You're Not Finished Yet, also Grandma, What is a Soul, and Psychology of the Soul and the Paranormal. And I like the little question on the cover of that book that says, discover why you get good ideas in the shower.
And it's Karen E. Herrick. That's been a typo that seems to have come through. So KarenEHerrick.com is the website. So I was watching Oprah one day, and she was interviewing a spirituality expert, a gentleman. And about 45 minutes into the session, she said, how come I get such good ideas in the shower? And he says, I don't know. And she said, well, people said it's because the warm water is hitting the back of my neck. He didn't get that. So I'm sitting there folding laundry, and I'm saying, yeah, it's your vagus nerve. It's hitting the back of your neck, which is your vagus nerve. And that's why you get good ideas. Now, this is a whole new thing about the vagus in spirituality. So the vagus is the 10th and longest nerve in your body. Comes in at the top of your head, goes down around your neck, and touches your amygdala. Now, your amygdala is fight, or frozen. Those are the three things that happen if you're little, or not even little, but if you're older and you want to fight or flee. But if you're little, you freeze, because what are you going to do? Run away from home if something's bad happening to you there? You can't. And so you freeze, and all that goes into your cells, that memory. Then the vagus goes down your spinal column into your heart and down into your stomach. Now, Darwin in the 1790s, I think, said that it was called the pneumogastric nerve, and that your stomach told your brain things and your heart rate went up. And then there was Dr. Porges, who has written many books on the vagus in the physical body. So what he says is that your stomach, things are triggered in your memory, and your stomach is where you feel fear, and then it goes and then tells your brain danger, danger, and then your heart rate goes up. So we use that. I had to learn about the vagus because I wanted to help people in post-traumatic stress or panic, right? But also, what I want people to know is you have two bodies. You have a physical body, and now you have a spiritual body. And the first person that I know that said that was St. Paul in the Bible, who said you come in on the physical and you leave on the spiritual, which is true. Okay, so what does this mean now, this vagus nerve? Now we get into mediumship. How does a medium get the information they get? Well, along this vagus nerve highway that is used by your physical body and your spiritual body is housed in the solar plexus, so your stomach. And the only purpose to have a spiritual body is to take your soul to the other side when you die. So people who have had near death, or Robert Monroe who left his body, or lots of other guys in the 1920s, 10s who left their body, talk about how they did that. And it is an automatic spiritual experience. I mean, really, when you think about it, just like I felt that breath, whatever happens to these people is right around the ears. There's some kind of click, and your body turns, and you feel this. You go through a tunnel, which I believe is the vagus nerve, and you have a spiritual body that isn't bones and blood. It's atoms and protons and chemicals. And so it goes up this highway of the vagus nerve, which is now vibrating. And vibration gives something structure and goes up through the top chakra, which is at the top of your head where your soft spot used to be. And you go out to the fourth dimension. And you have a near-death experience. And what keeps connecting you to your physical body so you don't die is the silver cord, and which they talk about in the Bible, that when the silver cord is cut, you are dead. So you go up the vagus nerve, and I believe that the silver cord is entwined with the vagus nerve. Although it's like the chakras, it's invisible. So in order to see what I'm explaining to you, you have to be clairvoyant. I am not clairvoyant. I have just researched it enough and seen enough illustrations to have gotten this far anyway. So that's how the spiritual body leaves, and you go up and you see your grandmother and all the love and people that have died before you, and then they tell you it's not your time, you have to come back. Well, when you die, you just stay there because the silver cord is cut. And it isn't cut because I said, I had a medium one time that used to come to me and I said, I want to talk to your spiritual guides. So who cuts it? Where's the knife that cuts it? Because that's what it says in the Bible. And they said it doesn't get cut, it just stops vibrating. So something that stops vibrating is going to just be loose.
I remember when I had that experience and saw the silver cord, I was out of my body, away from the planet, and looking down at the silver cord, and I thought, well, what if I undid it? What if I just, let it, and because it was attached, and so you would have to do something to disconnect it. And I thought, well, maybe that wouldn't be a good idea because that was my way home. But I did see it, I thought,
oh, I'm so glad because so many near-death people say they don't see it.
Yeah. Well, that was just an OBE. That was, there was no death thing involved. I was just out and about floating, and I knew I was out of my body because when I saw the cord, I thought, oh, that's a telltale sign. I'm out and about. And so it wasn't dramatic. It was just a curiosity. And then I thought, yeah, maybe not. That was the last time I saw it. They knew better.
You have no idea how happy I am that I talked to somebody today who saw the silver cord. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's actually, I was really shocked when I saw it. I've heard about this. I didn't expect to see it, but boy, it sure does exist. Usually I don't see it. And so that was one of those, it was one of those things of it was for whatever reason, I think I was allowed to see it. And then when that was my response of, well, what if I cut it? They decided, okay, let's not tempt her.
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
So we're on to better things now. Okay, there's another thing too with people who have these experiences, and it's a spiritually transformative experience, and that's what I've had. And I knew that at the time I didn't have words for it. I was 11 years old, and a girlfriend said, "Do you accept the Holy Spirit?" And I'm thinking, well, why not? Yeah, sure. And I said yes. And then my whole body, it was like a glowworm experience, and that's how I related it, and I internalized it, was that I was a glowworm, and I had a glowworm experience. And I told her, and she thought I was nuts. So I didn't talk to her about it anymore, but she's the one who triggered it, or at least me saying yes was what triggered it. But it was, that's when you were talking earlier about people not having a way to express these kinds of experiences, and to think that they'll be considered crazy as a younger child trying to tell these experiences. That's a challenge.
Absolutely. That's right. You need to be validated by somebody who understands, even if they haven't had this happen, that it can happen. We need more therapists who understand this, because somebody who's had a near-death experience usually waits 7 years before they even talk about it.
Yeah.
So when they talk about it, they need somebody that says that this is called a near-death experience, right? I mean, you need to validate it for that person.
Well, and there are organizations now that did not exist 15 years ago. The Near Death Association, the INS Association, those weren't around. Those are actually recent in our history, to be able to have as very solid and reputable at this point resources for people who've had these experiences, or if they don't want to talk about it, just at least go and get some more knowledge and support about what other people have experienced.
That's right. And that's the best thing, to be in a group of other people that have had something, and everybody has a little different thing, because whatever their sole purpose is how it's going to be expressed in their body. But I think it's wonderful that you saw the silver cord and you talk about it. That's great.
Okay, now your holotropic breath experience, that when you had that, had you heard anything about? Did you even think that was a possibility?
No, I went there. I was completely naive. I had started my business, the Center for Children of Alcoholics, and I kept going to conferences and getting more education. I was up in Massachusetts, and I was listening to Claudia Black, who talks about children of alcoholics, and I was having tea, and this lady comes and sits down, and she says, if you like Claudia Black, she said, you'll really like Jacqueline Small. And I said, who's Jacqueline Small? Well, she's a social worker too, and she's from Texas, and she teaches holotropic breath work. Oh, that's interesting. And that's it. I never saw this lady again. But this is how these little things come into your life. So you have angels that drop this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So 6 months later, I get a brochure in my mail, and it's from Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. I had no idea what they did. And Jacqueline Small was having a conference in Connecticut the same week that my last daughter, who was still a teenager, was going to sleepaway camp. So I was going to be free. So I called up and said, well, I'd like to come. And they said, well, it's a 9-month educational program, and it costs $5,000. And I said, oh, well, I don't have $5,000. And they said, well, there's a guaranteed student loan. If you apply, you'll get the $5,000. I said, you're kidding. I said, no. I said, okay, well, send me the paperwork. No idea what I was signing up for. And then I went, and I'm driving there, 5 o'clock in the morning to get to Connecticut by 9. And I'm thinking, why am I doing this? I could be home alone for a whole week, enjoying my peace and quiet. Yeah. That's right, relax. And there I learned about Jungian psychology and transpersonal psychology, which Jung and William James are really the first transpersonal therapists, because transpersonal psychology just studies other states of consciousness other than your normal waking state. So they accept everything. any kind of spiritual experience that's happened to you, or, out of body stuff. And all these people, there were 21 people there, and they had all laid down, and most of them, and they had breathed to this music, which was started by Stan Groth, who was a psychiatrist that was studying people that were, taking LSD in this hospital down in Maryland. And then the medical field said, no, you can't take LSD anymore. So he discovered this breath work that could take you to an altered state. Mm-hmm. And then he was studying the spiritual experiences that came from that. I had no idea about any of this. All I knew was on Wednesday we were going to lay down, we were going to breathe to music. And so I had to pick a partner, and the partner sat next to you, and if you needed water or to be helped to the bathroom or something. So anyway, the person that I picked said, well, I've done this before, and I go into the state where my hands and feet freeze. I said, do you think I could do it first? Because I just like to do it with no idea of what it is, because I really don't have an idea of what it is. Oh, sure. You can go first, he said. So anyway, I did that, and that's what happened to me. and when I woke up and stood and saw all the people that, I came on Sunday, and there was a woman under a tree, and she was saying something like, in a past life, I was a tree like this. And I thought, oh my God, what have I signed up for?
Yeah.
But when I saw all of them, or half of them, that were laying down and having their own experience, and I loved all of them. I thought, this is really weird. Uh-huh. But it was that knowing there was a God and that we were all connected.
See, that's what's so fascinating about it. That's something that, that moment, all of a sudden, you are a whole different person because of this experience, and there was no way to prepare for it. And then, of course, the recovery from that took a little while because, there was nobody there to say, this is what, I told you had rebirthed yourself, but there was more to it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But then I thought, a rebirth. Because I think I just watched George Bush movie, and my grandson was with me, and he said, what happened to him in the woods? And I said, I think it was a rebirth. Because he saw the sun and all this stuff, So that was my idea, George Bush's rebirth.
Yeah, there you go. They're perfect. Well, okay. So for right now, though, you are doing, I love, there's one that you're a webinar, Soul Through Time and Space, examining the evidence-based practice considerations of transpersonal psychology. That's coming up in January. But that sounds really fascinating. Yeah,
I talk about the soul from a Jungian perspective because Jung believed that we had a soul purpose, and that was our job in this life, was to find out what our soul purpose was. So the soul is derived from God and is placed in utero as a particle of energy when you are born. Now, the soul is not born, it's created. Therefore, it doesn't die, it's immortal. So therefore, it has to go to the other side somehow, and as I explained, that's why you have a spiritual body. So atoms and molecules are then formed by God, and the ethereal, astral, or spiritual body is part of the soul. And in utero, the spiritual body then covers itself with our physical matter. So our physical body grows and the spiritual body grows. That's why when somebody does go to the other side and it becomes a spirit, if they have controlled their energy enough, they can come into your bedroom at night and you can see them. And that's a spirit that's pretty evolved because they're using their energy to look like the last time you saw them. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so that's what a soul is. And how do we find out what our soul purpose is? Jung he talked about the unconscious, and it had 5 layers, his unconscious. So the first layer was your life and what happened to you. And the second layer was your parents and what happened to them and how that affected you. The third layer was DNA, your genealogy, your relatives you never knew. And he believed that some of those people had left jobs unfinished, and it was our job to finish it. So he believed in doing genealogy, and he would have people do that in their therapy with him. And then the fourth layer was your culture or your country. So how did that affect you? And then your fifth layer was your self/soul. And so your real self was in your soul. As I explained, you have a conscious and an unconscious, and your ego's right in the middle there. And the ego doesn't believe you have an unconscious, so you have to teach it that. And then as you're working on all these levels in therapy, So tell me what happened to you as a child. What were your parents like? What culture did you come from? All of that stuff, as you're bringing that to the surface to consciousness, your unconscious is getting less and less. And then eventually the soul self, which is at the bottom, is just coming up, trickling up. And then you will get some kind of spiritual experience or aha moment, or you'll take a different class, or you'll change jobs. Yeah. And all of that will then eventually teach you what your soul purpose is. Now, I also believe in astrology. So I've had the same astrologer for over 20 years. And so every year I have my astrology chart read. And so I know what month's going to be good for this or that. And I just write it down in my calendar and I forget about it. But that helps because my astrologer believes I was supposed to be a therapist. And I believe that too now.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that when I was married to the alcoholic, and I didn't have an education. And I started, I decided I was going to leave because in my life, my mother never left. She doesn't even drive. So she needed my father. And then she was always saying, well, we have to ask your father. And I'm thinking, why? Why are we asking him? Because he's usually drunk. He can't stand up straight. I don't know why we have to listen to him. So it didn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. In alcoholic families, that's pretty true. Like the kids understand the alcoholic drink. That's not hard. But they don't understand the spouse if the spouse stays. Because the spouse is who's keeping us here. As a kid, you want to get out.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So I always thought, I will not be like my mother. If I ever find that I'm married to an alcoholic, I'm leaving. Right? So, of course, my second marriage was my alcoholic. Uh-huh. And he was a salesman. And anyway, I was married about 10 years. And I kept, arguing with him. Tried to when he was sober about, you have to get some therapy. I mean, he worked for a 3-letter company. He had a nice insurance plan. We could have gotten therapy and really been helpful. And one night we're having this argument. When you fight with an alcoholic, you might notice their eyes are glazed over usually, and they're not there.
They're not there.
He straightened out and he said, I'm going to tell you something. If you repeat this to anybody, I'll deny it. But he said, I can live without. Alcohol, I can't.
Oh, darn.
And I thought to myself, I mean, I felt like I'd been slapped, right?
Yeah.
But I thought, oh, there it is. That's what I've been worried about my whole marital life. Because I got married for good. Mm-hmm. And now I have permission to leave.
Yeah.
Because now I know. And I mean, it was so real when he said it.
That was nice. That was clarity.
That was a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. But he was honest. He could not let go of that addiction.
And he was just tired of arguing about it.
Yeah. It's like, okay, we're done. We're done here. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. You're going to lose if you stay with me. Okay. And that was like, well, okay, I'm not losing. See you. Bye.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's part of it, though. I think that was something you needed to see, that you were strong enough, unlike your mom, to say, I'm done. And so that was the first hurdle, was to prove that you had enough internal fortitude to follow up on what you had pledged to yourself.
Yes. And I went into therapy immediately. And if I hadn't been in therapy, I mean, she really helped me, because it's not easy to divorce an alcoholic who doesn't want his image damaged because you're saying that he has a problem.
Yeah.
And
you're the bad person.
So, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I love the poodle, the website with your poodle. This is a beautiful, beautiful dog.
Thank you. She's my French call her Parquet Poodle. I got her after Hurricane Sandy. I lost the bottom half of my house. I had to lift it 8 feet. In January, I'm thinking, I got to have a bucket list here because your life could change any minute. And so I wrote one, and I'm there. I always wanted a poodle, a standard poodle. I didn't even know what a standard poodle was. And so anyway, I was reading the New York Times Magazine section, and there was Candace Bushnell had these beautiful poodles in this picture, because she had just written a new book, one on either side of her, and they're black and white. And I thought, wow, those are beautiful poodles.
Yeah. So
I had a friend come over, and we were having dinner, and she was supposed to be a dog person. Some of these dog people, they're a little, narcissistic. So anyway, she says, those aren't poodles. I said, really? What are they? She said, well, I don't know what they are, but poodles are not two colors. Well, the partay people say that's how it was in the beginning. So I don't know if that's true, because I didn't get involved in all that argument. So I thought, well, after dinner when she left, I knew she was an author. She'd have a website. So I went on it, told her my story, and I wanted to know where she got these poodles. And so she wrote back at midnight that night, which was great, and said she got them in Texas. And yes, they're poodles, and they're called partay. And that's how the French say it, but Americans say party. So she's a party poodle. And so I emailed those people, and they said, well, in March, we'd have a whole, new group of them, and you could pick one off the internet, which I did. And she came to me, United Pet Care, on Memorial Day.
Oh, she's adorable. I mean, and they have such a unique personality, too. There's when they're in the room, they are the star.
Oh, she is. Yes. And she knows it. And her name is Emma Young Herrick. So, because I thought Emma Young was quite the model for the wife, because he had an affair with someone for 14 years, and that woman was invited to Sunday dinner every Sunday for 14 years. And Emma kept her family together, and she and Carl Jung loved each other, and he just said he needed this, And she had 4 or 5 kids, so she probably thought, well,
what's another plate?
He probably does need it. So Emma has been, she's really a lovely dog.
KarenEHerrick.com. KarenEHerrick.com. Okay, I'm going to make sure I got that right. And do you go by Reverend Karen, Dr. Karen? What's
Mostly it's doctor, yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm not the usual Reverend. That's the interfaith ministry, and I went there because my father was Protestant, my mother was Catholic. I wanted to know, is there just one God? And I found that out, and then I thought, well, maybe I'll just get ordained. And so I did. And really what I help people with is psychologically, if they want to leave their religion or they're feeling guilty because they don't do their religion the way their parents would like, so a lot of that is help, because I can understand the different types of religion.
Well, and once you've had a spiritual, the experience that you had, it's all one. As you saw, the boundaries are gone, all the walls are gone. We are all connected, and having that experience makes life a lot easier.
Absolutely. No, you just know.
Okay, so the book, which one are you recommending right now?
If they want to know about the vagus nerve and spiritual experiences, it would be book number 3, which is The Psychology of the Soul and the Paranormal. And they can get that through Amazon. And Grandma, What is a Soul? My grandson, when he was 5 or 6, said he didn't want me to die. And so we're in the car. And I said, well, I'm not old enough to die. I kind of lied. And I said, but when I do, my soul will come back and watch over you. And he says, Grandma, what is a soul?
Okay, whoops, yeah.
So that's a children's book, but it also has a section for parents, and people have used it when they've lost a loved one and told children, they read the story about how Grandma comes back and watches over him, and then you're not finished yet. That was my first book that I wrote, and it was about living in an alcoholic or drug-addicted family and the different roles that the kids take on in that family. These are roles that children have in any family. And of course, the statistic is that, 95 to 98% of the families in the United States are dysfunctional on some level. So that dysfunction is normal. But I think whether you have a dysfunctional or a happy family, you have the oldest is the hero child, usually. This is just generally now. They bring pride to the family, get good grades, do well in sports, help the parents with the other kids, that kind of stuff. The second child is the scapegoat or the problem child, and that's usually the child that brings the family into, or the parents into counseling, because they just don't know what to do with this child, because he or she shows so much anger and really shows the anger for the whole family. That child really helps the therapist, because one of the things you tell them is that it's not just you. So let's see if we can try to figure this out, and then you won't be blamed so much. And then there's the third child, who is the lost child, quiet, shy, and sensitive. Spends a lot of time in their room, likes to read books, just kind of follows the other kids. Fourth child is the mascot or the clown, which we've all had in our classroom. Somebody that will just use a sense of humor for any reason to get attention. Those two, the clown and the lost child, have more mental illness in adulthood because they really have no idea what they're feeling. And then in some models, there's a placater child who just tries to make everybody happy, and usually ends up being very resentful, because if I'm trying to make you happy, The thought is that one of these days you're going to turn around and try to make me happy, but that doesn't work if you're just placating all over the place. So those are the roles, and usually we take on at least two of those roles. An only child would take on all of them at some time. I start out with that usually in talking to people when they come in, and what was your place in your family, and what was your role, and what do you think about your other siblings like this, and get a sense of the family first.
The timing for this is perfect. Something for everyone. If you're interested in dealing with the alcoholic personality, or if you've had a spiritually transformative experience, then it's all here.
Yes. And so I thank you. It's been delightful talking with you.
Thank you. Dr. Karen E. Herrick. Website, KarenEHerrick.com. HERRICK. If you've had a paranormal experience, you're not crazy. It's the flip side of reality. Links are in the description for the show. Thanks for listening.